Hello, welcome everybody to this webinar. Really glad you can all get here. I think we've got 18 people so far, and we'll wait and see how many more people arrive as we get going. I think we've got about 80 people who've subscribed, so should get a few more as we go. So my name's Jo O'Hara. I'm a forestry professional from Scotland, and I've been really lucky to be involved with the superb project for about the last 5 years, and that's now sadly coming to an end. And we're handing some of the things on to transform it. So I'm really pleased to be moderating this today. We've got a really good cross-section of people from different countries, disciplines, and importantly, they're from different parts of the knowledge exchange system. We have knowledge holders, people who know stuff. We've got knowledge users, so people who need knowledge in order to do stuff. And then the knowledge brokers who help to bridge the gap between those that hold the knowledge and those who need to use it. Before we get going though, and before I introduce folk, I've just got a little bit of housekeeping to do. So if I could have the next slide, please. Here we go. Okay, so the webinar is being recorded, and this is so that we'll be able to then post it on the EFI YouTube account, and anybody who hasn't been able to get here today, or if you want to recap on anything, you can see it there. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, towards the end of the webinar after our panelists have spoken. The way that we will do this is if you use the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen, to put things in. We will, if we have time, we will try and promote selected participants to speak so they can ask the questions themselves. But if you're uncomfortable with that, then I'm quite happy to read it out. And I may need to do that if we do get short on time. The last thing to be aware of is, and this is so that you kind of keep your attention focused as we go through, is towards the end of the webinar, we're going to share a Mentimeter link. And we want you to think about what is your one sentence take home message from the webinar. That's when people say to you, well, how was the webinar? What's the thing that's going away with you? So I suggest you start thinking about that right from the get-go so that it doesn't come as a surprise to you at the end. And then the last thing is that we're on LinkedIn. So, oops, if you could just go back. If you're going to use the socials for any of this, or if you want to share the YouTube clip at the end, then we're the @Superb project, and we're also the @Transform It project. They're the two projects we're working from. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. This is the agenda so that you know roughly what the shape of the day is going to be. We're here from 4 o'clock if you're European time, 3 o'clock if you're UK Ireland time, and we'll be finishing at 5:30 European time. So it's a good hour and a half. Hoping to have about 20 minutes or so on a Q&A at the end, as I say. So hopefully there'll be plenty of time for you to engage. Okay, next slide, please. So thanks for that. We're going to get going now. And if we could bring each of the presenters up, please, into the panel mode. Thank you. So welcome to our panelists here today. You in the audience can now sit back and listen to the 5-minute stories from each of them. But like I say, remember to sort of think anything that kind of really sticks with you, make sure you take a note of it so you can pass it in at the end. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, and I'm going to take them in alphabetical order. So panelists, please, could you introduce yourselves and kind of where you fit into the knowledge exchange system? And then could you think about what are the most important types of knowledge to be shared from your personal perspective? 5 minutes each, please. And I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So first of all, Gesche, to you, and then we'll come to Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo. My name is Gesche Schifferdecker. I'm a communications manager at EFI, and coming from communications, obviously I'm a knowledge broker. So my role is to communicate about science, and I am also the manager of the Forest Knowledge Gateway, which is a platform that I'm going to introduce briefly to you. And I will also let you know why we developed this gateway and where that fits into the introduction that Joe just provided us with. So the most important knowledge that we are sharing there is both practical knowledge, experience knowledge, and scientific knowledge around forest ecosystem restoration, also nature conservation, biodiversity protection, and integrated forest management. And the way we're doing this here is a stakeholder targeted way. And I will show you why. We have the so-called knowledge pathways, and those knowledge pathways we developed for specific stakeholder groups that we identified as the main stakeholder in restoration and management practice. And you can see here landowners and practitioners, planners and implementers, policy actors, and funders and investors. And I'm going to dive into one of those knowledge pathways, the policy actors knowledge pathways. Just to give you an introduction, we provided the knowledge here, and we were, of course, in touch with policymakers, and we asked them, what is the type of knowledge that you need, and how do you want it to be presented? And based on that, we developed this journey where they can learn in a pretty short way. You can also see that we try to really condense the knowledge and provide it also in a way, and that's definitely one of my main objectives, to provide it in a way that is understandable. So when we talk about what knowledge, it's also important to how the knowledge is presented, and that means anticipating what our audiences need and then tailor the guidance to them. And here you can see that we try to provide different overviews, and we make it really short and concise, and also try to have some more narrative style presentation instead of a jargon heavy style of presentation. Another element is about the knowledge is to provide it in a way that it's also understandable from the language perspective, because people speak different languages, and particularly when we talk about the practitioners, the local people, it's very important to provide the knowledge in the local language. And this is why we have a translation function. It's an AI function. We are still working on improving it, but this way we can really see that the people can actually access the knowledge. And then finally, what we also prepared here to keep the gateway entertaining, and also to have this more like for the AI lovers, we have our forest assistant, the Frogbot, which is an AI tool that we prepared just for the gateway. So it collects knowledge from the gateway and prepares it in a tailored way. And I'm just going to show you what I'm giving you an example: forest restoration. And then you will see that it provides you with an answer that is quite short, and that is just based on the knowledge that the forest bot collects from the gateway. And here you can also see the different sources. And then finally, what we will have eventually on the gateway, and this is where you all come in, and this is also what I think is important about knowledge, that we collect knowledge from very different sources. So we will eventually have a suggest a resource function established in the gateway. We're currently working on that, where you can then all suggest the knowledge that you want to provide, so that we make this a platform that is very inclusive and has also offers different perspectives to the topic that we cover. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Gesche. And this has been a long time coming, this gateway, but I'm really excited about it, because I was a policy person. I guess I still am a policy person, and trying to wade my way through scientific papers, which I knew had really important stuff in them, but was so impenetrable. I think, I just wished I'd had something like this that did that translation function for me. So great, really good to see it go live. So thanks for that, Gesche. So that's a knowledge broker. Jonathan, on to you next, please.
Thank you. So I might just go ahead and share my screen
Of course.
first. I hope you can see it okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, my name is Jonathan Spazzi and I'm with the Teagasc Forestry Development Department in Ireland, which is a state-funded extension agency integrating advisory, research and education services. So our main stakeholders are forest owners. So I work primarily with forest owners on the ground, and our main role is supporting the rollout of the National Forestry Programme. I work as a development officer, and I also work very closely with our research department, and I participate on a number of European research projects. I previously worked as a consultant forester in Ireland on close to nature management, and now I provide support to forest owners in the southwest. And I also have a national role in relation to close to nature management, education and training. It is fair to say that in Ireland in recent years, we've seen a rapid evolution of Irish forestry. We have a growing interest among forest owners and foresters on integrated management options for multi-purpose forest use, which is very exciting. And we also see national and European policy increasingly promoting integrated management. So it's clearly an opportunity, but one of the main barriers to progressing this area is still the lack of expertise, knowledge and know-how amongst owners, but also foresters and contractors. So we're moving from the why to the how. So in the next few minutes, I will give you a flavor of some of the development projects that I've been involved in Teagasc in collaboration with some colleagues and other organizations. So for context, this is some training and development needs analysis from a few years ago. So when we think on integrated management, we think of innovation, especially in Ireland, changing practices, changing perspective, changing minds. So if you take a look at the recent evidence of innovation science, we see that innovations interestingly moves through distinct stages. To me, similar to forest natural development stages. So from a seed idea, inspiration and planning will take us to development stages. And from there to realization and dissemination, we can reach embedding where new practice become normalized, which is what we're trying to achieve. So through this process, we require a steady flow of information and knowledge, and this can take three basic formats: transfer, exchange, and co-creation. With transfer and exchange being important at the beginning to achieve development, and co-creation becoming more and more important from development onwards. Currently, I believe that in Ireland, we just achieved development stage. So with this in mind, these just a flavor of some of the projects that have been involved in recent years. The Oak Park Mark Telescope workshops. This is an initiative funded by Teagasc, working closely with the Integrate Network, where we aim to take a co-creation approach, primarily involving forest owners. So it's learning from doing, peer-to-peer learning, discussion and sharing experiences. I've been coordinating this project since 2019 in the Oak Park Forest at the Teagasc National Research Centre in Carlow. We train about 100 participants per year. Each workshop is capped about 20 participants, is hands-on all-day workshop in forest on integrated management, again for private owners, even though we get foresters and other forest users. These are just some pictures from some of the more recent workshops. And we're also involved in a new exciting collaboration within the Oak Park training facilities, a 4-year collaboration with the Saami Forest led by INRE and EFI, aiming to combine new modeling simulation software, Windmar telescope field exercise, then be used again with participants. One associated development has been the Forest MOOC for Change. Is a virtual classroom resource. It's a free interactive online course on close to nature management. It was developed in Teagasc in association with 3 more developing agencies in Europe, specializing in close to nature management, and was coordinated by Forest Nature. Is an 8 weeks in Belgium. It's an 8-week online interactive program. To date, we engaged 16,000 participants in 3 languages in the last 2 years, and currently we have a new session just ongoing and ending in January. And of course, for myself, as in Teagasc, running through the year, Integrated Management Promotion Program has been acting as a chair for the Integrate Network with my colleague Dermot Dunphy in the Department of Agriculture. And on the screen, you can see some of the main participations and some of the pictures relating to that. So it's been very, very busy and fruitful year. But I suppose the main highlight of the year was organising a successful meeting in Dublin where we decided, following from the previous project, to take an interactive approach and also to invite a number of forest owners to attend and participate and share their perspective with researchers, practitioners, policymakers. And one of the main take-home messages that I might bring here to this webinar from the meeting was really the importance of keeping communication channels open between all stakeholders, including forest owners, for mutual learning.
Brilliant.
Back to you,
Thanks,
Jo.
Jonathan. That's great. And I visited that multi-telescope site a good few years ago. So yeah, I think it's an amazing resource that's available there, and huge learning from it. And 16,000 participants in the MOOC. That's incredible.
I know. We were targeting 10,000 when we put in the application originally, and we thought we were being over ambitious. So it pays to be ambitious and bold.
Yeah, great, good stuff. That's really good. Great. So we've actually heard from 2 of the brokers first. So now, Karin, I'm going to come across to you. Hopefully, we've sorted out your slides now.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be presented here.
There we go.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Karin Pilflykt, and I work at the Saami Council, one of the oldest still existing indigenous peoples organization in the world. We're celebrating 70 years to the summer. We engage in strategic litigation, advocacy work, and research partnership that often center the co-production of knowledge. Above all, we are trying to be the voice of Sami civil society. But me, who am I? I grew up closely connected to the land, skiing, which I really love, through old pine forest, through reindeer husbandry work, related tasks to that, and gathering, for example, berries with my family. So from a very early age, I saw biodiversity in forests not as an abstract concept, it was lived in reality. So being born and raised in a reindeer herding family meant that ecological knowledge and daily life were deeply intertwined. So later on, when I had this interest in forest and biodiversity in life. I saw a forest study at the university. So when I carried this practical and place-based understanding with me, I got this interest in forest studies. However, when I went there entering the university environment, I was stuck by the narrow focus on the curriculum, and the emphasis rested overwhelmingly on forest production, maximizing yields, planning rotation cycles, and also calculating a lot of timber values. So very limited attention was given to biodiversity, indigenous land use, cultural landscapes, or alternative forest management modes, which I know about before I started the studies, was not mentioned. So elements that were fundamental for me and Saami land relationship and sustainable forest stewardship was not there. Next slide, please. So having my Saami indigenous background, I started to see this knowledge gap within the scientific world and the university. So and later on also forest policy, that it was not built to include the lived experience and knowledge system that I was born with and people like me. And I realized I wanted to work to bridge that gap on a daily basis. So because of this background, I see not only like on one knowledge system, we were talking about how about knowledge systems today. So as a reindeer owner, I'm not a herder, but a reindeer owner, I am a knowledge holder, carrying Sami traditional knowledge about land, forest, reindeer behavior, lichen ecology and snow condition, but also the long information that I got from my family and etc. in a long-term environmental changes. So rest through my academic training, I am also a knowledge user familiar with forest science and forest policy and land use planning as well. And then in my professional work now at the Saami Council, I do also act as a knowledge broker, helping to translate and connect Sami knowledge with scientific research and EU level policy process example that as well. So it is this triple role shapes how I understand and how I work with in forest knowledge. But today I am maybe a little bit more in the knowledge holder view. Next slide, please. So for me, the most important knowledge I believe must be shared is the forest governance in Sami knowledge or our traditional ecological knowledge. And for that, it is example long-term based on generation of observation, place-specific and detailed and sensitive to cumulative effects, but also like holistic, linking ecology, sorry, my English, ecology, and sorry, food system, culture, and also well-being. And it tells us, for example, with this long-term knowledge where lichen grows, how snow and ice form is under climate change, the very important migration routes for reindeers, for example, and how grazing patterns shift over decades, and also how biodiversity support both reindeer and cultural resilience. Next slide, please. So also, not only forest and forestry, climate change is transforming the boreal forest. Rain on snow events, for example, creates thick layers. It is then not possible for the reindeer to reaching the ground on lichen, which is the most important food for the reindeer. So traditionally, the reindeer herders was moving the reindeer into old growth forest to feed on hanging lichens instead. But in Sweden, 70% of this lichen-rich old-growth forest have been lost and replaced by monoculture plantation with very low biodiversity. So when we look at this problem, it's not only like an ecological problem, it also results in food scarcity, for example, collapsing grazing cycles and loss of cultural practices as well. And even, as I mentioned earlier, mental well-being is being affected by the lack of control over our own land and the future. So this is also why it is so important to have Sami knowledge. It helps us to understand these early changes because reindeer herders is often out every day seeing changes in the snow, in the forestry, or in the forest and biodiversity. So it guides adaptation in ways scientific monitoring alone cannot. Next slide, please. So for forest governance, both nationally and within EU, Sami culture and Sami knowledge is not only like cultural add-on. It is a knowledge system that strengthens policy outcomes. And we have seen indigenous land management over the world is proven to result in higher biodiversity, lower deforestation rates, and more resilient ecosystems. So EU and national policy needs this knowledge to meet its own objectives. But how to do it? We need to co-creation of knowledge. and policy spaces where indigenous perspective carry equal weight, and a long-term investment in both Sami language and land-based practices. So I just want to end that we need a forest governance model with Sami knowledge, scientific knowledge, and policy knowledge that works together from the beginning, not as a parallel tracks, but as integrated systems. Thank you.
Tremendous. Thanks, Karin. It was really, really good. And I think, you made this point about the individuals wear multiple hats in this chain. It's not, sometimes you're the holder, sometimes you're the broker, and sometimes you're the user of knowledge. And it's so that everybody's aware where they sit in this at each stage when they're talking. So I think you made that point really nicely. So thank you for that. And I think also this long time span, this knowledge bank that goes back centuries, that sits in indigenous communities, and how do we access that and use that? So great, thank you very much. Next I'm going to come on to Kelsey. Oh, I appear to have Martin. No, Kelsey, right? You're next. I think you're the next K, so you come up after Karin.
The next K.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thanks, Kelsey. Over to you, please.
Yes, of course. It's a lovely experience in a Zoom chat to see all of the reactions come up. I haven't been in many where you just get all of the hearts that come up. So just to say, it's always quite a humbling experience to have to follow after someone like Karin. Especially as my background, I did not grow up in forests. I grew up among plains and came to really appreciate forests actually much later in life. So I am now a forest owner, actually. I'm part of a cooperative in Belgium, just a little bit south west of Brussels in an area called Braine-le-Comte. So we have about 80 hectares, a big chunk of which is a Natura 2000 site. And I've worked for the past 6 years or so with an NGO celebrating our 30 years this year, called FERN. And we have a joint mission, which is making sure that forests, as well as the people who depend on them, are properly supported through EU policy. So I appreciate that the discussion was already opened to say that often we're at the intersection of multiple knowledge systems, of being knowledge holders and users and brokers. So I think I definitely relate to that in the sense that in some spaces, I feel I'm holding quite a lot of knowledge, specifically on EU policy processes. So the technical conversations that are going on in the background, often we have to do a lot of translation work to people that have practical knowledge on the ground to say, hey, your input is very needed in a policy process that is going on at a certain period of time. So that's one perspective that I have sometimes. But I think often many of my colleagues and myself see ourselves as knowledge brokers, in the sense that if good policy is to be made, then we need to get the right experts in the room. And many of the colleagues that were involved for the MOOC for Change, we worked with them, for example, over the process of looking at closer to nature forestry guidelines, which was an imperfect process, but we try and strive for things to be better and better over time. And it is through finding those people that have the local knowledge and trying to pull them into the policy processes. Also bringing policymakers up to speed. Obviously, people that are elected to serve in public office are not necessarily forest experts, and they're the ones that are making a lot of decisions on these policies that can influence quite drastically the way that forests are managed across Europe. So being able to start conversations with them and introduce them to some of the academics and foresters and forest owners and civil society experts. Actually, one of the largest difficulties that we have is this question of stakeholder management. So what types of knowledge is most important to share, I think, is a conversation that we're constantly wrestling with. I think in terms of the knowledge that we feel is quite appreciated, I would echo things that were already mentioned before, that the economic knowledge seems to carry a significant amount of weight in the EU policy discussions. I mean, it is a single market, so sometimes thinking in euros makes the most sense for many players, but of course, that is quite incomplete. So the first step that many people go to when they think of environmental NGOs is, well, then you add the academic and environmental knowledge by looking at the peer review studies that Joe mentioned and trawling through all of that data and trying to make it accessible. We also try and to make sure that we're properly channeling everything that was mentioned by the Saami Council and emphasizing that indigenous knowledge is incredibly important. Through recent years, we've also tried to create bridges also with forest owners. One of the things, if I can do this transition smoothly, I would like to show the type of activities that FERN is quite well known for. So we do a lot of case studies. Obviously, we know that the academics are out there, but we would like to give voice also to citizens who are forest owners or technicians. So we do these types of case studies like financing continuous cover forestry and case studies from across Europe. And we've done a number of these types of studies, basically just to give some perspective of the other voices that might be out there. And I think that touches on another area of knowledge, which I find important, which I don't think was quite as mentioned, but I'd like to kind of emphasize this towards the end, which is the social sciences. I mean, we are in the business of representing interests. FERN, we represent the public interest, and we would like to make sure that the voices of foresters that are being heard accurately reflects what we're seeing across surveys of foresters, which we found are pretty thin overall. We could use a lot more information knowing about small forest owners. So I think in addition to all of the different types of knowledge that we'd mentioned before, I would perhaps end on representativity of different views coming from the social sciences is also an area where I have a particular interest in seeing that the discussion can be representative and flourish in terms of what all forest owners and practitioners think about the way we should move forward through policy to incentivize healthy forests for the long term. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Kelsey. Thanks for that. And tremendous work that FERN does. And we've got you as a forest user, as an NGO, but obviously you are brokering a lot of knowledge as well. And I love that metaphor you used of the weight of different types of knowledge and where it sits in the argument, and thinking about, are we giving appropriate weights to different types of knowledge? I thought that was a really nice way of characterizing it, and particularly how we enable social science to be heard. And I come from a technical forestry science background, so yeah, I absolutely recognise that, and how to give it oxygen. Great, thanks. I'm sure we'll come back to that in the discussion. So next, I just want to move on to Marie, who is next. There we go, Marie Vandewalle. Great. Okay, I can't see your face. I'll just see your slides. That's excellent. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, very well. Good. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. So a bit of a different presentation than the other panelists, but I will start with my little introduction like the other co-panelists. So my name is Marie Vandewalle, and I'm a senior scientist at the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research, the so-called UFZ in Leipzig, Germany. You see all the rest of my affiliation on this slide, so I'm not gonna just repeat them. More importantly, I've been asked, like the others, to tell my relationship with knowledge. So first of all, I'm a grassland ecologist by training, so hope I don't disappoint anybody. So about 14 years ago, I shifted from being a knowledge, like a pure, I will say, knowledge holders or producer, to becoming what we call the knowledge broker for the science policy interface for biodiversity. The change started from a deep frustration. During my research, I was watching my research plot disappear to development year after year, despite clear scientific evidence of their high ecological value. So it made me question the role of science and research, and because we were generating vast amount of knowledge, yet very little of it were translated into decision, actions, or even protection on the ground. So I realized for me that science alone was not enough, and what was missing was a structured and credible way to connect it with policy and societal needs. So that's when I decided to work at the interface, contributing to hopefully making knowledge more usable and used by decision makers. So this journey eventually led me to help build two key initiatives that I'll talk about today. So Eclipse and the EU Science Service for Biodiversity. So it's both what we call knowledge brokering mechanisms. And so they have been created to strengthen evidence uptake and support better science or knowledge policy processes in Europe. So that was about me. And then regarding what type of knowledge I think is more important to be shared, I really hope through the next slide that my answer will be is highly context dependent. It simply depends highly on the question asked. First of all, the experience with building the science service for biodiversity. So this is done through the BioAgora project. So BioAgora is very unique. Why? It's because it is directly mandated by the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2030 to set up science policy mechanisms to ratcheting up the implementation of biodiversity commitment. So the science service represents the scientific or knowledge pillar of the Knowledge Center for Biodiversity, which is hosted by the GRC. So what we are doing, so we are aiming to facilitate the orchestration of existing processes and initiatives at the science policy interface, and aims to become the one-stop shop between any knowledge needs coming from the European Commission towards the knowledge community. So the science service will be fully functional in 2027. And we already identify three main overarching functions to fill existing gaps today at the EU scale at the interface. So I don't have time to detail all three functions, but I'm going to concentrate on one that I think makes sense today. It's regarding our answering request function. So how this function is today working with the European Commission. So through the ticketing system developed by the Knowledge Center for Biodiversity, today any Commission service staff is able to submit a request for knowledge to the Science Service. So once the request is received, the Science Service has a full process to start scoping the request in order to clarify, refine, and reformulate the question so that it can be answered by the community. And we do this by an iterative process of dialogue with the requesters. And here, this is the moment where we identify together with the requester what types of knowledge will be needed to fully answer the question asked. And then, depending on the expectation of the requester, but also, of course, the timeline given to receive the result or to produce the result, we have identified two types of answering request process. We have what we call the knowledge overview process, which meets a timeline lasting anything between few weeks and up to 7 months. And here we are mainly working with the knowledge existing in EU projects, so in an ongoing EU project. So it's not a pure knowledge synthesis, okay? It's really knowing what is existing today on this topic. The second process is what we call the in-depth request process, and here it aims to really provide consolidated views from science and other knowledge actors, including a very broad type of knowledge types, depending on the request. And for this type of process, we are mainly using today an existing knowledge brokering mechanisms, which is called Eclipse, and has been there already for almost 10 years. And I'm going to say a few things about Eclipse. So as I say, it's existing for almost 10 years, but we are a spin-off of an EU project and self-sustaining now mechanism since 2020. And the original vision was to be able to answer policy relevant questions from governments, businesses, NGOs, to allow them to make better informed decisions when it comes to biodiversity. So in a nutshell, what we are doing is that we are producing contextualized and timely evidence reports by synthesizing the best available knowledge and facilitating the uptake of the result. We have now produced 20 evidence reports with direct and traceable impact in policy, science, and sometimes practice. And the latest one that I'm inviting you to look at is about the impact of offshore wind farm on marine biodiversity, which was mandated by or requested by DG Environment. In Eclipse, we have a very broad range of requesters. We are not only answering requests from the European Commission. So to the question on what types of knowledge, I hope you understand that now it's really depending on the question, and we co-identify what type of knowledge is needed depending on the request. And I will leave it here because I think I ran out of my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marie. And I'm pleased to see SEPA in there. We might have left the Commission in the UK, but at least we're still participating, so that's good to see. Great, and I think, yes, that subject specificity is so important there. It's very hard to generalize in terms of what's the most important. So great. Thank you for that. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Thank you for that. We're now going to move on to our final, last but not least. It's just where your name came in the list, Martin. On to Martin. Same question to you, please.
Okay, thanks, Jo. Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Martin Belcher, and I'm the Director of Impact at the Palladium Group. We're a global private sector company delivering sort of impact and development programs, and I work in the climate, environment, and natural capital. I'm going to talk just a little bit from a little bit of a different perspective, primarily because my sort of specialist area is tropical forests and sustainable land use. But I think a lot of the information and knowledge and data issues that the other panel members have talked about apply equally for whatever sort of whatever context forest you're looking at. And I'm in particular going to talk about the information needs of investors and the financial sector to invest and scale up investment in forests and nature. Obviously, we're all aware that is needed. We don't need to talk about the climate change, biodiversity emergencies and stuff. I think everyone on this call is fully aware of those. But I work on a number of different programs where basically the objective is to support the financial sector and the asset owners, the forest owners, to basically come together and scale up private sector investment. But it's not happening at the speed that is required. And we really need to accelerate the scale of investment, whether it be in Europe or whether it be in tropical forest environments. The money is not flowing fast enough or at the scale. So what I wanted to do is just share a single slide. Let me see, it's this one. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Yeah. Oops, where did I go to here? There we go. And actually, this is the slide. So basically, what is the problem here with that scarcity of investment? Luckily, it's there's a rapidly increasing level of interest in investing in forests, in investing in nature and biodiversity, but it's not turning into action. And why is that? So there are resources there, maybe not enough, but there are significant resources there, and they're woefully underdeployed, basically. And the issue is knowledge, skills, attitudes. Yeah, there's a lack of them. So what do we need to do? And I think one of some of the key issues are that it's a sort of complex, poorly understood asset class, if you like. I think European forestry is relatively well understood. But some of the other benefits we talked about community benefits, the biodiversity benefits, the sort of socio-economic benefits, they're less well understood. And there's a lack of knowledge in there. And I think it falls into two priority areas. And one of them is basically on the left-hand side here. It's pretty basic in a way, but it's where are the returns on my investment going to come from? So I'm interested in investing in nature. I want to, invest in some forest assets. Where are my returns going to come from? What is the return profile going to look like? Now, there are some good knowledge resources, but they need to be strengthened. They need to be made more widely available, and they need to be tailored for the individual needs of the different investor classes, the different investor categories, and the individual investors as well. And the other sort of priority need in terms of knowledge improvements, knowledge understanding to be improved, is really around the risks and the sort of risk profile, and the realistic risk mitigation. So I think a lot of the sort of community working in this area is probably over prioritizing like the positive aspects, which are great, and I'm not underestimating those, of investing in forests, and less sort of addressing the risks, the real risks that could arise, and the risk mitigation, the environmental, the social, the governance risks, all of those kinds of things, and really providing the right level of information so that the investor community can take that and come up with an appropriate risk return profile to then place the assets into the forests, into the nature, and into biodiversity and things like that. And there's a real lack of knowledge here, and I think it's there's things like some of the things on this diagram about there's recognition and understanding, so we need to be made greater awareness within the investor community. There's confusing taxonomies, different standards, different terminologies being used all over the show. There's a massive complexity of number of tools about how you can assess or understand all of the different aspects. And then this leads to like perceptions, problems of perceptions and attitudes, if you like. And so knowledge can really help in overcoming all of these. So sort of my, one of my missions in my sort of professional life is really to sort of plug that gap with taking the sort of knowledge providers, with the knowledge consumers. And I'm really focused on the investor community, who really need those two sort of key categories of what is the revenue return, how am I going to get my money back, because I need to get it back, and what's the risk return profile of that investment so that I can manage that appropriately. So I think knowledge of all of the different kinds we've heard about today is really essential in all of those in those aspects. So thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Martin. And wow, what a spread that we've got there. And this is just 6 people in terms of the number of people that are involved in this this whole subject area. So so thank you for this. What we're going to do now is have the panel discussion. So we'll all probably be spotlighted, I'm not sure. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm going to do is I've got questions around holding knowledge, brokering knowledge, and using knowledge. And as you've all identified, you all wear multiple hats at different times, but I'm going to try and pinpoint you on specific hats, if you like, when you're answering a certain question. So my first question is around holding knowledge, and I'm going to focus on Jonathan and Karin for this one. So maybe just very quickly, could you tell us about a time, just to paint a picture about when information that you have held has actually transformed action on the ground? So when did it work? So Jonathan, do you want to go first on that, and then I'll come to you, Karin?
Sure, I have a number of examples, thankfully, of that happening. There's one that sticks out in my mind because it was it led to a lot of positive ripples. Just meeting this forest owner contacted me to have a look at his young forest, and I went and met him in the forest, and it struck me that he had great passion for the forest. There was a whole family involvement in the forest. The condition for the forest was such that he gave him the opportunity of switching from the course he was on. It was kind of planted as a clearfell spruce plantation, but there was a lot of conditions that was conducive to long-term retention and multifunctionality and engage with cluster nature management. So amongst other options, I introduced that to this particular owner, Liam Bresnan is his name. The Bresnan family were now friends. And he thought about it, he took it away, discussed it with the family, came back, and they straight away liked the idea. They never thought about it, they never were exposed to the possibility of managing a forest as a natural system while still enjoying the products and the services and the recreation and the legacy they were after. To cut it short, Liam successfully is managing his forest through close to nature management. He's gaining a good income from it. The forest is blossoming at all levels, is highly biodiverse. He's become an ambassador really for integrated management locally. It was instrumental to inspire other neighbours and forest owners elsewhere, as I was able to open the forest for open days visits, wrote a number of articles on him and his experience, and he actually was profiled in the Forest Book for Change as one of the I think he was in the inspirational section for inspirational forest section. So, and it all started with just sharing a different way to do things, passing on some knowledge together with the finance to do it, because at the time we had in Ireland just launched a new funding for continuous cover forestry, which I was involved in defining and piloting. So there was the money for him to do it, So going back to what Martin was saying, we do need the resources on the ground to enable knowledge and innovation to become a reality. So that's my example.
Great. So you passed the knowledge on to somebody who then became a broker themselves by inspiring other people. So that's that's how that information's flowing through the system. So yeah, great example. Karin, over to you. Very different environment, obviously. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there is some reflections and experience from my own that I see in Saami knowledge has been made tangible difference on the ground, and moments that we also reach people in policy making. One example is that I saw Marie also was member of EUBP. The Saami Council is also that, and I am represented there. And also in earlier forest and nature stakeholder working group in EU Commission. So we contributed, for example, directly to the guideline on closer to nature forest management. So by sitting in the EU Commission in high level, we have been contributing, as I mentioned, through this work and helping and ensure that Sami land-based knowledge and also free, prior, and informed consent was reflected. And later on, how is it implemented? That is another question. But still, we were in the process and we are being heard when we are in this fora. And otherwise, there's also been concrete situation on the ground with Sami land-based knowledge has influenced decision. For example, rerouting or adjusting land use plans. So in several forest planning processes, documentation provided by reindeer herders, for example, migration routes, grazing patterns, snow condition, and areas of high lichens value has led to real adjustments when they've been heard. So in some cases, as I said, they've been rerouted, felling plans have been modified, or key areas for reindeer husbandry have set aside to protect crucial winter grazing landscapes. Also some real restoration managements, resources and information had led to the Sami reindeer herding areas has worked with both forestry and conservation authorities to reintroduce traditional low-intense burning, which then after restores pine forest biodiversity, for example. It later on also encouraged lichen regrowth and also maintains open patches, which is very, very important for reindeer movement, both in when they are digging for the lichen during the winter time, but also migration routes. So yeah, that is some examples that's been good.
Great, thanks. You've really kind of brought that to life for us in terms of what's actually happening in the landscape as a result of that knowledge being heard and being able to be acted upon. And I'd heard about the burning one because that's kind of part of Superb. I think some of our teams have been involved with that, and yeah, really clever solution that's come out of that. So yeah, that's great. Thanks. I'm going to move on to the knowledge brokers now because we're a bit up against it in terms of the time. So here I'm going to highlight Gesche and Marie, and I'd like you to speak a little bit as knowledge brokers here. So can you just sort of again bring to life for the audience, what do you actually do to help bridge the gap between knowledge holders and knowledge users? And you might want to speak about whatever tools or platforms you might use. Gesche, you've obviously already talked about the gateway. You can maybe build on that or talk about other things. That's fine. So maybe we'll start with you, Gesche.
Yes. Well, an important element of the knowledge breaking or kind of translating the knowledge between the kind of bringing it from the knowledge holder to the knowledge recipient or the knowledge user is entails capacity building. So making the knowledge provider aware of the needs of the knowledge user. So to build that bridge to, and that links to the language that the knowledge providers use, both in terms of jargon or terminology, as well as in terms of the kind of local language. It's also really important to think about the audience actually before you provide the knowledge, to think about to whom do you want to reach out. And that's, of course, a very important element of my work in general. And that's also fundamental for European Forest Institute, because we try to bring knowledge, try to connect knowledge and action. And what I didn't mention in my gateway presentation, because it's not such a crucial element there, but it is a very crucial element of my work, is the storytelling. So to provide the knowledge in an engaging way, that the knowledge users can connect to it, that they kind of, and that doesn't mean it shouldn't be based on science or on practical knowledge. That's very important, but to provide it in a way that people can connect to it. And a good example was, for instance, Marie, who was telling the story from her research and the lack of translation to decision making, and also the story from Karin, who is telling about where she's coming from and what brought her to where she is. And this way, we also listen more, and we are more curious, and we are more eager to learn from the knowledge providers. So that's, for me, a very important element also of the work.
Love that. Brilliant. Yeah, make them eager to learn. That's yeah, and it's quite a trick. And I've seen you doing it in practice as well. And it's recognizing that it's a skill, and people need to build capacity in it if they want to be heard. So yeah, excellent, good stuff. Same question to you, Marie.
Yeah, thank you very much. Oops, do you hear me?
Yes, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it was not unmuted for me. Okay, so yes, how do we bridge knowledge holders and knowledge users through Eclipse and BioAgora? I will also reiterate what Gesche would just say, the importance of co-creating processes that identify policy needs. The formulation of the question is key. I don't know how many, I guess 90% of the questions that arrive need a refinement. Why? Because often if we would take the question as it is, the answer will not help the requester. So by really going into in-depth understanding of their needs, help refining and reformulating the question so that the knowledge community can actually truly answer the needs. Yeah, so that's I think the important aspect that we have in our process is this scoping phase. And here in the scoping phase, we call upon the community to let us know what is existing already on the topic. So it's called an open call for knowledge that is often used also in other knowledge brokering mechanisms. And here is to avoid duplication of effort, because the number of time where we realize that the work has been partially done, but the requester has no idea about it. So our aspect here is to understand what is left to be answered, and then again reformulate and let the community know about this new reformulation. And then we use as tool, of course, an open call for expert. And here, during the scoping phase, I already touched upon it during my presentation, but during the scoping phase, we identified what type of knowledge holders we are after. We don't believe that scientists hold all the knowledge needed, especially in certain type of request. So we make a list of all the type of knowledge holders that we would like to have around the table, and also, especially in contested issue. We really try to ensure that we have different type of values around the table. Very important as well. Other tools that we are using is we have a portfolio of 20 different types of knowledge synthesis methods, and often we realize that we need to combine them. So not only one, but often 2 or 3 to be able to fully answer the question. And also important tools is that all what we are setting up as processes is grounded into a strong ethical infrastructure. So everything we're doing is scrutinized through potential ethical risk. And then we put in place ethical measure to counteract the potential ethical risk. So that's, that's our reflection around the breach. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. And you're making me think of, I don't know if it was Einstein that said it, but it's this, you know, if I had 10 years to solve a problem, I'd spend 9 years formulating the question and one year getting the answer. So, you know, getting those questions right. And it's obviously really relevant in the world of AI as well. You know, we're all learning that, you know, if you don't ask the right question, you're going to get rubbish. So, yeah, that skill and training people, building that skill to ask the right question to get what they need, I think is hugely important. Great answer. Good stuff. Before I move on to the last two, can I just remind audience, we've only got 2 questions in the Q&A. So if you have got any questions or points you want to raise with our panelists, you want to hear a bit more from them, please add that to the Q&A. And also, if you could just highlight which panelist your question is aimed at, that would be super helpful. Thank you very much. Great. Okay, last kind of set of questions from me for now is for the knowledge users. And here, Martin and Kelsey, I'm going to kind of characterize you as the knowledge users. Obviously, one of you in that kind of policy NGO space and the other in the finance space. So could you tell us a bit about how do you go about doing this? As you know, at the end of the day, you're the ones that are going to apply this knowledge in the real world. How do you go about finding the knowledge that you need to do your work? And maybe you could add in a bit about how is this changing with AI coming into the mix? Who wants to go? Kelsey, go to you first.
All right, I'll take the first stab. So yeah, as mentioned, there's a lot of different areas that we would go to. So if I had to break them down into categories, I would think about sort of academic journals, like was mentioned before, and linked to that, I would say RSS feeds are particularly interesting for us. So we'll be putting in search queries that are usually looking to answer policy needs, so that we can see what types of academic articles are out there that are responding to those issues, at the same time that we're trying to get information on the development of the policy process. Another one is networks. So, I mean, I will follow up with many of you on questions. So these types of EU projects are great for us to be able to understand the new research that's out there and practitioners that we'd like to get in touch with. And we do that as well to be able to reach out to civil society in different countries to be able to see the latest issues that they're working on. And I think that becomes more and more valuable in a world of AI, where our problem is there's too much information out there. It was another element that I wanted to add as well, is often we're involved in many EU projects, and often it's maybe a year after the project is wrapped, or sometimes we'll look back and go, oh, there was a really interesting piece of information that came out of this project, and we weren't aware, whether that was because we had too many information channels or the results weren't communicated to us as a stakeholder. And then we go, oh, well, it would have been great. So maybe that's to say kudos to the development of the knowledge hub that's being produced, because it makes us aware of what's out there. So I would say that, I mean, the only thing that AI is changing is that maybe when you tap in your first search query, currently you may not be getting the most relevant information. So I think that just puts us back on relying on institutions, academic journals, networks. One of the phrases we came out with collectively was we needed more coffees, less reports. So I think that also talks to the transmission of knowledge in different circles that is becoming ever more important as we're losing context and being provided with too much data and not enough information.
Brilliant. I think you've just given me my one-word sentence at the end, which is more coffee and fewer reports. That's a great one. Love that. Yeah. And I absolutely, too much information, actually too much knowledge for users to just get their heads around is a huge challenge. And it's interesting that you're so far not seeing AI make that any better, which is concern, really, because that's the sort of thing it should be able to help with. So great. Thanks for that, Kelsey. Martin, onto you. Very different world then in terms of working with investors. How would you approach that?
Well, so I would sort of say that my background is basically a knowledge producer, a knowledge broker as well, and a knowledge user. But just for example, and I think there's common themes throughout all of those three categories. So, for example, if we're looking at how investors make investment decisions, then they will need like transparent, verifiable, ideally historical performance data. Yeah, and they will need to be able to like triangulate that and verify in some way. So, not just what I'm saying, oh, this is a great asset. They're going to have to have some evidence of that, and they'll have complex, burdensome due diligence processes to go along with that. No particular information format or structure will be able to bypass or shortcut. So they have to work within that sort of that environment, if you like. And I think what's important to know is like what knowledge brokers do they use to help with that process, because they may not be specialists, so a pension fund, let's say, they're not going to be specialists in forests or nature, so they're going to look to people that are. So I think the case of people on this call who can act as that specialist broker, understanding the information needs of the investors, and help with that, that conversation with robust evidence, with historical evidence, and with reputable and transparent evidence. So, and I think that people who produce evidence, so I do that in a lot of my sort of monitoring, evaluation, learning type roles. You've got to get your data out there, like your monitoring, your evaluative reports, get them out there, get them publicly available, so that people can learn from them. Because obviously, a lot of it's like you might be involved in a particular project, a particular forest, a particular asset, but if you've got enough data, then you can like correlate that across a number of different instances of that and start to build a better understanding of how those investments may perform, what the risks might be, etc., things like that. So I do think some key sort of principles about like openness and transparency, like independent verification. There is a lot to be said for like sources. I think AI it's useful to like deal with large volumes of data, but when where it's better or worse is where actually you can delve into the sources that are giving you that answer. If you can't do that, it's very investors, well, they might be cutting shortcuts, but I wouldn't want an investment advisor that was taking those kinds of shortcuts. So I think that it's a bit like very much got similarities with academia as well, that you've got to cite your sources, you've got to use a variety of them, you've got to trustworthy, all of that kind of thing. So, but I do think that a critical one is knowledge brokers, because I don't think AI is ever really going to replace the role of a knowledge broker in the investment process. It might get you there quicker, but ultimately you're still going to need to present that investment opportunity to an investment committee, which will be people, and they will have certain judiciary responsibilities that mean they'll have to look at the information carefully. So it will be very important what you're presenting them with, how it's sourced, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that the role of knowledge brokers is increasingly important, although you might think AI says, no, they can be cut out of the picture. I don't think that is the case.
So is it maybe that the role of the knowledge broker is changing? So what a knowledge broker might have been 10 years ago and what they might have been focusing on in the age of AI, do you think it's maybe it's changing? So they're just as important, if not more so, but how they operate may need to be different.
Yeah, just because in the investment process, you still need to sort of make you still need to present the investment hypothesis that will be challenged, and it will go through these processes. And until those are fully automated with AI, which I don't see happening anytime soon for various legal and cultural reasons, the knowledge broker is still going to be really important.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be able to use AI tools to get to the sort of to build the case more effectively, but fundamentally, I don't see the conditions on which that case is built are changing. You're still going to need reliable, robust, referenceable data.
Great, thanks. And given that I directed those questions to people specifically, is there anything anybody from the panel wants to add or reflect on that they've heard on from other people? Whether that's this question of you build capacity in the knowledge holders so that they can reach their audience in a way that the audience wants to listen. Maybe these points about the sort of the formulation of the question. This question of different values, different weights associated with different types of knowledge, and have we got that right? And do we need to be a bit more aware of that? Or anything about sort of AI? I mean, if anybody else has got any kind of reflections on how AI is impacting their role within this knowledge ecosystem. Yay, Gesche.
Thank you very much. Answers to all those questions come to my mind, but I want to focus on one thing that I identified that was kind of reflected upon implicitly, basically in all the talks, which is the trust. So we need to be able to trust the knowledge. It was very strong, obviously, also in Martin's presentation, but it's a crucial point with all the knowledge that is out there. How can we actually trust the knowledge that is provided to us? And I think this is also where I agree that AI cannot replace us as human beings, making connections, building this trust in relationships. And also it cannot replace science and also other forms of knowledge that are provided, that are based on experience. And I think that's a crucial thing to remember. And that's also what it's what the panel was implicitly also reflecting upon. And that is something that I consider very important, is to be able to trust the knowledge. And this is also where all the three elements, the knowledge provision, the knowledge broker, and the knowledge user, are coming together in a way.
Great, thanks, Gesche. Yeah, Karin, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, I do also want to stress that even though it's good practices happening, it's also very many situations that Saami knowledge does not travel far enough, or not taken seriously enough, or to influence the outcome. So often we see structural barriers in decision making, for example. So sometimes the problem is not the content of the information, but the architecture of decision making. So our input is being shared, but the process is not designed to integrate indigenous knowledge in a meaningful way. So often also consultation occurs late, or when decisions are already financially or politically locked in. And And yeah, as also you mentioned, like knowledge in culture and different views. Saami ecological knowledge is often long-term, relational, and place-based. And yet many forest governance is structured and built on short-term cycles. In 60 years or 100 years, that is nothing for us. We have been here for thousands of years. And as Kelsey mentioned, also economic metrics. And for example, when the planning forest management is plot-based inventories. So this mismatch makes it difficult for our cumulative insights to be fully understood or valued as well. So we are also seeing that we're getting stuck in the system, even though we have warnings, we have scientific knowledge about, for example, fragmentation, climate impacts, or lichen scarcity in reports, as I mentioned. They are not always reached to senior policymakers, for example, or private forest owners or bigger companies or companies that have decision-making authority. But often these cases as well, it is not like the lack of information, but also lack of uptake of that.
Yes, which becomes then we get into the whole kind of conflicting values thing, which is obviously a huge challenge. Thanks, Karin. That's great. Kelsey, I'm going to come on to you, and then Mari, if you can be quite quick, because we've suddenly had a last-minute rush of questions in the Q&A. So, so Kelsey, come to you next.
Yes. So I think that we're also operating within the tension of needing to keep communication simple in a policy context, but also providing adequate context. And I think the example that I often use, because I hear it all the time in my work, is the idea that because forest cover is expanding, that metric then represents sustainability of forestry. And I've heard this over and over again over the course of 6 years. And of course, there are many different studies that you can point at to say you must look at much more than forest cover extent to understand the health of the forest. I think everyone here understands that. But it can often be a losing battle with short attention spans, where it can be easy to digest more forests, better forests, as opposed to a more nuanced message. And so I think that's also a challenge that we're facing in current political discussions, to keep it concise, but keep it embedded in an accurate context.
Great. Thanks, Kelsey. Mari.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to your question regarding AI and knowledge brokering mechanisms. So while co-developing innovative knowledge brokering mechanisms, I cannot count the number of times where I've been asked whether whatever we are setting up will be obsolete in a couple of years. Yeah. And so I started to look into it, and we had a really nice master study who looked into the importance and role of AI in knowledge brokering mechanisms, using Eclipse as an example. And for me, it was really a mind opener about all the ethical issue that will lead the use of AI. So I will not list them all, but the conclusion is that at the moment, with where we are with the development of AI, we should more use it as a cost and time efficiency tool to support some aspect of knowledge brokering mechanisms, but we cannot be replaced by knowledge brokering mechanisms. This will be really going in the wrong direction. So yeah, thank you very much. Happy to share this master study if people are interested.
Thank you. Thanks, Mari. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the questions from the audience in a minute. As I do that, Shan, could you just put up the Menti link so people can start typing in their takeaway messages? Are you able to do that if you're still there, Shan? There we go. Right. So everybody who's online, if you could just go to Menti and type that in, and just start typing away at your kind of takeaway message, and we'll come to that at the end, and we'll share that at the end with anybody who's still with us, so we can see what's landed with people and where to go next. Thank you very much. So I'll just leave that, and that's the question. So while that's still up, I'll read out the questions. We don't have time to spot people, so apologies for this. So the first question is for you, Martin, I think, which is, how are private investors assessing political or regulatory risks for forest investments? Are they using any specific frameworks or methodologies that you can share?
I think that it will be part of the standard due diligence process. So looking at the jurisdiction in which the forest asset resides. But there would be sort of frameworks like FSC, sort of risk, I forget the exact numbering of it, but there is a risk sort of assessment framework. I'll try and post the link in the chat in a moment, that they would probably be using, but it would depend on the sort of location and the nature of the investment. So for example, in lots of the tropical forest zone, there's perceived risks very high, but actually, you know, we all know about the operating environment in Europe or North America, whatever. There's operating risks, you know, political operating risks that are huge there as well. So I think this sort of division between emerging markets and established markets, you know, being a key decider is coming down, which is good, because obviously we need the forests in all areas. So I think there are some sort of assessment frameworks, but there's not like one that does it for everyone. It really will depend on what sort of like framework that the investment body is operating under. But I would have said FSC is probably the leading one.
Great, thanks very much, Martin. And that was from an anonymous attendee, so hopefully they've got what they needed. So the next one, and I apologise for any false pronunciations of names I have here, but this is Louisa Boris-Saute for Kelsey. And the question is, from an NGO advocacy standpoint, what forms of knowledge or communication resonate most with policymakers when pushing for stronger forest and biodiversity protection?
I think it depends on who you're talking to in the policy circuit. But if I had to be crude, and I think I alluded to it a little bit in the beginning, I do think it is the economic argument. I hear often, if you can explain to me why environmental degradation is costing us money, then that would be very helpful in the discussion. I think that's something that I've heard quite often. And maybe next to that, also issues around social controversies that might be related to environmental degradation. So those are two subjects I would point to.
Great, yeah, it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, money's a common language between, and being able to articulate things in euros is helpful, if incorrect some of the time. So great, thanks for that, Kelsey. Then we have a question from Johan Svensson. Again, back to you, Martin, which is how do you go about at Palladium? How do you go about ensuring or confirming additionality for investors? And for those that don't know what an additionality is, that is that more nature values are gained compared to what have been done without the investment. It's a much vexed question in nature investing. So insights.
It's a great question from Johan. I mean, additionality is really important. Like it's critical, and I think that's one of the big sort of changes that's happened, say, in carbon markets in the last sort of year or so, that there has been a much more emphasis on robust additionality. It's something that we work with a lot at Palladium, because we do a lot of sort of development programs, so they're public. They're often blended finance, public and private, and you really need to understand what the additionality is. So I think, you know, if you're not operating within, say, like a structured or semi-structured market, say like the carbon market, where additionality, you know, to be rigorous, you really do need to follow a very robust standard of doing some prior analysis, sort of what the situation is, some baseline scenario, looking at what the expected outcomes are, then monitoring them and being able to demonstrate that actually this will contribute to change. You know, it's absolutely essential. And I think it would be true for any kind of like impact associated with forests or nature, so not just carbon. So if you're talking about biodiversity, if you're talking about like social impacts as well. So what is the actual like situation now? So then you need to invest in the establishing what the baseline is, and then on a realistic and robust projection into the future, and then monitoring progress against that. But it is essential, because what we need is investment that is additional, that delivers additional benefits, because otherwise, you know, it's just a waste of money, really.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks very much, Martin. Now, we have got another question here, but I don't really think it's relevant to this this panel. So, Asim Iqbal, you're asking about how digital technologies such as drones and satellite can use to monitor health and detect deforestation. His example is to do with in Pakistan. Unless anybody wants to answer that, who's on the panel. I'm not sure that's really one for us to answer here, and we are about to run out of time. So sorry about that, Asim. We're not going to be able to get to that one because we need to get to our takeaways from today. And I see there's some coming into the Mentees, which is great. And I'm going to go around the panel first. I will give mine first because that'll give you a little bit more time to think about it, which is ask good questions and communicate appropriately. It was kind of joining together what Marie was saying with what we were hearing from Gesche about capacity building. And I think, you know, that's kind of, if those two things work, and you've got a trusted expert in the middle, then that should help smooth things along. So that's my starter for 10. Who wants to go next? Kelsey, do you want to
go? Yeah. I don't know if I can improve on more reports, less coffee, but can I say that I agree with the multidisciplinary knowledge will help with trust and context. I think that's quite an important takeaway that I would put my weight behind.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. Thanks. Karin, to you next.
Yes, it's important to have this multi-perspective and the whole knowledge system and integrate it in the early stages, that every knowledge system as well is equal. So, yeah.
Thank you. Gesche.
Yeah, from my point of view, I want to say that it's crucial to honor and also include diverse knowledge types, including, of course, indigenous knowledge, and also share it in ways that that resonate genuinely with communities, because only this way we can build trust and have also then effective and equitable management of these ecosystems.
Thanks very much. Marie?
Yes, I will have a more direct plea for everybody to get interested and get engaged in knowledge brokering mechanisms activities. I presented only 2. There are plenty others who are doing a great job from national to global scale. So yeah, get involved, and because your knowledge is needed and can make a difference. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much. Martin?
I think transparency and trust, reputable sources.
Thank you. Nice and succinct. And Jonathan?
Yeah, I think it's around communication, and you know, we are in a changing landscape. Socially, forestry landscape is changing. So I think we need really to invest more resources in networks for communication, discussion spaces for all users, and to try and connect really grassroots with your you know, from grassroots to policy level, really including the forest owners in the discussion. And to go back on the coffee analogy, we often might think that knowledge is imparted on individuals, but we don't operate as individuals. We operate within communities, communities of use, of practice, local communities. I think we need to think in that term, in those terms, and coffee tastes a lot better when it's shared as well.
Brilliant. And what a lovely way to finish from the panel. So thanks, guys. That's absolutely tremendous. And we got there. We've got 2 minutes left. So I hope that's been interesting and engaging for you all as sorry, as participants. Sorry, just seeing the summaries from Menti. So hopefully that's been interesting for the audience as it has been for us engaged in it. What an excellent bunch of panelists. I can't do a round of applause because we won't be able to hear each other, but thank you so much. Jonathan, that last point about, we're not individuals in this. This is about communities, and communities function in strange and mysterious ways, but they're also incredibly powerful. So thank you for that. And I don't know how we're going to share the Menti at the bottom. So we've got these 4 summaries, so 4 groups. The biggest one is around diversity. I think that was coming through loud and clear. There is lots of different knowledge held in different places, communicated in different ways and with different values. And we need to tap into all of them. And I think multiple perspectives probably is another aspect of that. So we've maybe got 9 on that. I think the investment risk point, people really clicking into understanding if we're going to get money into forest restoration, we need to understand what the investors need and be able to provide it to them. And then the last thing, that lovely, stay close to people. That's always a good thing, and coffee tastes better when it's shared. So thanks very much for that. I think that's bang on 5:30. So those of you who have to go and collect your kids, you are free to do so. Thanks everybody for engaging, and we'll send out the link to the YouTube video as and when it goes up on the EFI website. So thanks very much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.